Welcome back to Breakdown. SEC versus the Big Ten. JJ, how you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm feeling good. Today is November the 10th, 2021. We're going to talk about the SEC and the Big Ten. JJ, I got some questions going to run by you. Uh, Prior to last Saturday's game, there were five undefeated teams in the power among the Power Five conferences. Now there are three. Those three being Georgia, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma. How many undefeated teams would that be at the end of the regular season, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, no offense to UTSA, but
Not a Power Five.
as it pertains to the Power Five structure and Cincinnati, who will be joining the Power Five structure very, very soon, I think that there will be two teams undefeated at the end of the season.
And those two teams in your mind?
Those are the two teams that are, well, either SEC schools or future SEC school in Oklahoma.
Okay, Oklahoma and Georgia. Who's going to beat Cincinnati?
I have Houston upsetting them in the conference championship game.
Well, granted, uh, Cincinnati looked really bad against Tulsa.
And the previous 2 weeks before that too.
Agreed. Tulsa gave that game away in my mind, but
Indeed,
Cincinnati still won.
they did.
They won. Okay, JJ. Last Saturday, MSU lost to Purdue, Michigan State Spartans. Was Purdue a trap game for MSU, or is Purdue just a bad matchup for Michigan State?
I think any school that likes to throw the ball around is going to be a bad matchup for Michigan State. Um, Depending on the metrics that you look at, they either have the 127th or 130th best passing defense in America, and there's only 132 FBS schools. So that's not great.
Well, they have played other teams and they've beaten them. I
Yeah,
mean,
but they've given up a lot of passing yardage to the other teams. I mean, going into the Michigan State game, they were 121st in the country.
okay. So if Michigan State and Purdue were to play, say, 10 times, on who would win the majority of those games?
Well, if Purdue wasn't ranked and Michigan State was ranked in the top five, I would say Purdue would win the majority of those games because they seem to have a knack for beating teams in the top five when they're unranked.
Okay. What about this coming Saturday? Purdue goes, I believe it's a home game for in Columbus.
Yeah.
Uh, does Purdue have a shot at defeating the Buckeyes?
I don't believe so. I don't believe the Buckeyes have a porous of a defensive secondary. I mean, no disrespect to the Florida transfer, Chester Kimbrough, or at corner, but he is burnt toast pretty frequently.
Sounds like a lot of disrespect to me, but but that's neither here nor there. Okay, granted,
Well, you already know how I feel about Ohio State. I think I made my
I know how
feelings
you
clear.
feel. I just don't understand how you gather those feelings.
Oh well,
But okay, Ohio
accumulation
State.
of much
Ohio
data.
State struggled last week as well. Did you remember that fact?
they did, but they didn't struggle as much against Nebraska as either Michigan or Michigan State did. Michigan State didn't beat Nebraska in regulation. They had to go to overtime at Michigan State, and Michigan was and very fortuitous that Adrian Martinez fumbled the ball when he did, or else they could be a two-loss team right now.
Okay, okay,
So you're allowed to struggle and win. You know,
okay. You mentioned Cincinnati potentially not being undefeated at the end of the season, uh, and you said Oklahoma probably would be. I, Oklahoma got some tough games for them. They got Baylor this coming
they
week.
do have Baylor,
The last game of the season
Is
is against
Bedlam.
Oklahoma State.
and their biggest upset potential is sandwiched in between those two games. Iowa State has been playing the second best football of any team in the Big 12.
So how can you go with them being undefeated?
I do not have any belief in Baylor, although they do have an Arkansas native under center and Jerry Bohannon as their quarterback. Um, I think what TCU did right after losing the best coach in franchise in, like program history is a blueprint that Oklahoma could absolutely use. I think Caleb Williams is superior to Chad Morris's son. No disrespect to Chandler Morris, but
Okay. One question about Oklahoma before I get back to something else. Oklahoma, I don't know where the Oklahoma State game is going to be played.
it's at Oklahoma State.
I gotta feel Oklahoma State is going to have extra incentives to win that game, especially if Oklahoma is undefeated, because Oklahoma is upset that Oklahoma State is upset that Oklahoma is leaving. You don't think that would the crowd get them up more for that game?
I mean, for all we know, depending on what happens with the Oklahoma legislator, maybe Oklahoma State might be going with them to the SEC. I mean, I think that one's still up in the air. But I think incentive or not, I don't think that they have the horses for it to really matter.
Okay. Well, back to Cincinnati again. What does the loss last week by Wake Forest, who was undefeated, and Michigan State, who was undefeated, what do those losses do for Cincinnati?
It moves them ahead one, not two spots because they already were ahead of Wake Forest, but it just moves them ahead to one spot.
How much does that increase their chances for making the playoff, assuming they do not get upset by Houston?
I think all losses are helpful for them because their schedule was so front loaded. They don't have opportunities to increase their resume, their profile, the way that Ohio State does, the way that Michigan does, and the way that Michigan State, quite frankly, still does. I mean, they still have opportunities. I mean, they still have the opportunity to beat Penn State and Ohio State.
Indeed.
There's a lot of schools that have opportunities to advance, and Cincinnati, outside of Houston, I mean, SMU is pretty good, but they don't have the opportunities that are in front of them that a lot of Power 5 conference teams do. So
Point well taken. Back to the Big Ten, specifically the Big Ten West. Last week, Illinois beat Minnesota, and a huge upset in my book. What does that do to the Big Ten Western Division? And now, who's the favorite to win the Big Ten West?
I think that opens the door for Wisconsin at 4-2 to go in and win.
Okay.
I know they have the same record as Penn State, or not Penn State. I mean Purdue.
Oh, well, there's 4 teams in the West
That have
same
4-2
conference.
records.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Iowa, Purdue, Minnesota.
But Purdue has to play Ohio
Wisconsin.
State. Wisconsin already beat Iowa head-to-head, so they have that tiebreaker.
Okay.
And just looking at the schedule, I think Wisconsin has the Wisconsin and Iowa. I would expect both teams to win out from here.
Okay.
And Wisconsin already has the head-to-head win over Iowa.
Okay. I tend to agree with, but you mentioned Wisconsin. Wisconsin destroyed. Was it Rutgers last week?
52-3.
Yeah. Is there a Big Ten team right now that's playing better than Wisconsin?
I mean, I think you can make arguments for Michigan. I think you can make arguments for even Ohio State, but Wisconsin has been playing incredibly well the past 2 weeks. They've gotten to their identity of running the football, not putting the ball in Graham Mertz's hands for him to turn it over. They're running the ball 2.5 times more than they're passing it, just on attempts, and they're producing incredibly well. I don't think either Braylon Allen or Ches Malusi is, the reincarnation of Monty Ball or Melvin Gordon or Jonathan Taylor, but
Gotcha.
they might not have that same type of dynamic lead back that Wisconsin is known for, but their identity is running the ball playing style defense, and Jim Leonard really has that team in on all cylinders.
Okay, I will agree with you 100% there. Uh, the Big Ten in general, the middle of the pack teams like uh, Purdue, Minnesota, uh, I don't know, the ones that are middle of the pack, are the middle of the pack Big Ten, is the middle of the pack Big Ten teams this year better than normal, or is it that the upper level Big Ten teams are weaker than normal?
Yes.
Okay, there we have it from JJ. Can you elaborate a little bit on that
I think that the position groups that make the most significant impact are quarterback. In college football, it would be
one?
running back,
True, true.
pass rusher, and cornerback. And I don't see the disparity between the haves and the have-nots at those positions like there was in the past. Clemson and Ohio State, they had the quarterbacks that everyone was talking about last year, Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence.
True.
Um, Now the quarterbacks are a little. There's not as much there's not as much talent, I guess, in that pool. Same thing with pass rushers. Ohio State, I've said this a bunch of times. They've always had like a Chase Young or a Joey Bosa or a Nick Bosa or something like that.
Okay.
They don't have any of that. Neither does Alabama. So I think it's not just an issue in the Big Ten. I think it's an issue across the college landscape. I don't think the corners and the pass rushers and the quarterbacks and the running backs are standing out in this year's crop the same way that they did.
Definitely, they are not. And you mentioned Alabama. Alabama struggled mightily against LSU. Uh, Actually, LSU had a great shot at sending that game into overtime or maybe even winning it. Does Alabama, in your mind, have a legitimate shot to make it to the college playoff? Because they still got on their schedule Auburn, even though they lost last week, and Georgia. So
Assuming they get to play Georgia.
that's true. That's true. So, given that fact, let's just assume that they well, let's not assume that. How legitimate of a shot does Alabama have of making the playoff? Is it greater or less than 50%? And explain why.
I would say as much as the college playoff committee wants to give them every opportunity, placing them at number 2 again, even after that poor showing against LSU,
Yeah.
I would say that they have less than a 50% chance of making it, because for them to make it, they'd have to win out. And I don't think. I finally came to the edge, and I no longer believe Alabama will be beating Georgia.
Okay.
So
Who has a better shot of winning out? Alabama or Ohio State? Because if either of those teams lose a game, they're out of the playoff.
Ohio State has a much better chance.
A much better chance.
There's no Georgia in Ohio State's conference.
There's a Michigan and a Michigan State.
Yep. And Michigan State just lost to Purdue, and Michigan lost to Michigan State.
Oh man, and I really think that even if Ohio State get by in the East, win the East, I think Wisconsin would beat them in the playoff. In the Big Ten conference championship game. Any thoughts on that?
I think they'd have to throw the ball to be able to do that, and Graham Mertz in Wisconsin has not shown the capacity to do that. I mean, Michigan beat them by 20 something at Wisconsin. That was the last time Wisconsin took a loss, was to Michigan.
I understand.
I think Wisconsin matches up really well with teams that they can dominate in the run game, and I don't believe Ohio State is one of those teams.
Well, this is how they play the game. I've been right a few times this year. I've been wrong more than a few times this year, but time will tell. Moving on, JJ, to the SEC. Last week, Kentucky got upset by Tennessee. Mississippi State, which was a top 25 team at the time, was upset by Arkansas. On today, right here, right now, from top to bottom, who has the better conference, the Big Ten or the SEC? Right here today.
I would say it would largely be a coin flip, but I would say the presence of Georgia would give the edge to the SEC.
Okay.
I don't think any team has been as dominant as Georgia's I don't think any unit in college football has been as dominant as Georgia's defense.
Hey, that's for sure. That's for sure. Uh, you know, can speak the SEC, Georgia specifically. They got an easy schedule rest of the year until they get to the SEC championship game. How comfortable if Georgia loses in the SEC championship game? Are they still a lock to make the tournament?
Unless they lost by like 50 some points, I would imagine that they would be. Yeah.
They lost like 10 points.
Who are they eligible to even play against in the conference championship
Well,
game?
A&M, Auburn, or Alabama, most likely.
Yeah, they could just sustain a 10-point loss to any of those teams
And
and still make it.
Okay.
I think that's the college football landscape this year. But if they got destroyed the way Wisconsin did against Ohio State a couple years back when Ohio State won the
I
championship,
remember that one.
I think that could leave a poor enough taste in their mouth for the playoff committee to not put them in. But the playoff committee is showing you what they think about the SEC by putting the top two teams in the country, one of which that doesn't even look particularly good as SEC teams.
Yeah.
LSU is the only team that has not been ranked in the college football playoff poll in the SEC West the past 2 weeks. Mississippi State was ranked last week, and now Arkansas took over that spot. But Mississippi is ranked. Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M.
Okay.
LSU is the only one, and they're firing their coach. So that should let you know what the playoff committee thinks about that division.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of stuff goes by name these days, and not actually the eye test. A lot of it is the name across the jersey. But JJ, that's because you're saying it's a coin flip, but because of Georgia, you would give the edge to the SEC in
Yeah.
football. As far as Big Ten, SEC football, they're still being played out. Really quickly hit on college basketball. The season started yesterday, Tuesday. Ohio State almost lost, and we're only going to spend a few minutes, and then we're gonna cut things short today. Ohio State almost lost. A miracle win for them.
Yeah, at home, EJ Liddell hit the last second shot to beat Akron.
How does the Big Ten SEC basketball team shape up this year for you as a whole?
I think that is something that the Big Ten would come in. I think the Big Ten is the best conference in basketball easily this year.
Okay.
And I think the SEC is in contention for that number 2 to 3 spot. But I think that there's a pretty big chasm between the Big Ten.
The best team in the SEC and the best team in the Big Ten. Who you pick?
I mean, I'm going to pick Michigan as the best team in the Big Ten. I
Ahead
know a
of
lot
Purdue.
of people are going to pick Purdue. A lot of people are picking Illinois.
Illinois got to replace a point guard.
They do, but they have the best player in the Big Ten and the preseason player of the year in the conference and the preseason All-American, Kofi Coburn. They have him, and they have plenty of guard play. Like their freshman from last year was dynamic. He was really good. He was a good 3-point threat, but he also get in the lane. I can't remember his name. It was either Andrew or Anthony. I can't remember.
Okay, quickly tell me why is Michigan better than Purdue?
Oh, just balance. I think that they have Caleb Houston. They just have the inside and outside presence. I think.
Okay. All right. One last thing. I want to hit the SEC. Who's the best basketball team in the SEC this year in your mind? And I know it's early. A lot of them haven't even played.
If Fulkerson is healthy for Tennessee, I mean, I would go Tennessee. They've been killing it in recruiting lately. If you listen to their recently terminated coach Jeremy Pruitt, they've been doing that in ways that are not exactly legal to the NCAA rulebook. But the basketball team has been killing it in recruiting, and if they can get 6-year senior John Fulkerson back from injury, I think that they have the balance on the perimeter and the interior. Arkansas struggled a little bit with Mercer.
They struggled a lot.
Yeah, JD Notae really had to take over.
Yeah. they only played what 7 players against a Mercer team to me, which is crazy.
And
You
as much as Eric Musselman loves his guards, like he's gonna have to figure out ways to incorporate lineups that aren't just 4 or 5 guards.
and he can't play them low. He can't play his players the number of minutes throughout the whole season that they did against Mercer. But JJ, we're gonna wrap it up kind of early. Is there anything you want to hit on, discuss? I know we're still in the middle of football season, but when basketball season does get here in full bloom, we got some great analysis on the basketball school. So I'll make sure you listen for those. But as of right now, JJ, anything?
No, I'm ready. Like this is the best time of year. You have all of my favorite sports converging, um, except baseball. Sorry for that to be over, I guess. But I'm just excited.
All right. Well, uh, thanks everyone for listening to us. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if there was anything in there at all that you found interesting. Always make some comments. Also, we like to hear from you and your response. Peace out, everybody.